blood ran from my nose into the dust. That was what I remember most clearly about the moment my old life ended. Not the thunder of the drop pods screaming down through the ash-choked sky of Viridian 3. Not the way the ground shook when they hit, sending plumes of grey powder billowing across the killing fields where we'd been fighting for 6 days straight. Not even the silence that followed, that terrible pregnant pause when even the orcs seemed to hold their breath. I remember the blood, warm and copper-tasting as it dripped into my mouth, mixing with the grit between my teeth. I was 12 years old, and I'd just killed my third greenskin with a sharpened piece of rebar, driving it through the creature's eye socket while it tried to bite my face off. The blood was mine, from where it had head-butted me before I got the makeshift spear in deep enough to matter. I was still straddling the corpse when the shadow fell across me. I looked up, blood and ash making everything swim in my vision, and saw a god. That's what my child's mind processed first. A figure in armor the color of dried blood, taller than any man I'd ever seen, broad as 3 men standing shoulder to shoulder. The setting sun caught the edge of a shoulder plate, and I saw the symbol there, a white droplet on crimson. Blood angels. We'd heard the stories, of course, whispered around cook fires in the ruins of what used to be Hive Tertius. The Emperor's angels, his chosen warriors, transhumans who knew no fear, who could not be killed by mortal weapons, who stood between humanity and the horrors that filled the galaxy. Standing there in the dust with my murdered greenskin still twitching beneath me, I thought they'd come to save us. I was wrong about that. They'd come to harvest. The Space Marine looked down at me with eyes that gleamed red in the failing light. His helmet was mag-locked to his belt, revealing a face that might have been carved from granite. Scars crossed his features like roads on a map of violence. His skin was pale, almost luminous in the dimness, and when he breathed, I could hear the double beat of his hearts through the chest plate. 2 hearts. The stories were true then. "What is your name, child?" His voice was like rocks grinding together, deep enough that I felt it in my chest as much as heard it with my ears. I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry. All that came out was a croak. Behind the angel, I could see more of them, moving through the battlefield with careful precision, their red armor making them look like drops of blood against the gray wasteland. They were examining bodies. Human bodies, mostly, the remains of our PDF unit and the civilian militia that had been pressed into service when the orcs invaded. Sometimes they would kneel next to a corpse, study it for a moment, then move on. Other times, they would find someone still living. Those they would pick up, gentle as someone handling glasswork, and carry back toward their drop pods. "Your name," the angel repeated, not unkindly, but with the firmness of someone who expected obedience. "Torvin," I managed. "Torvin Raid." "Age?" 12, my lord, I think. We lost track after the first bombardment." The angel nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd already suspected. He knelt down, bringing his massive frame closer to my level, though even kneeling he was still taller than me. Up close, I could see the details I'd missed before. The chips in his armor where bullets had struck and failed to pierce. The purity seals dangling from his shoulder guards, their wax stamps pressed with symbols I couldn't read. The combat knife at his belt that was longer than my forearm. "You killed this one yourself?" He gestured at the orc. I nodded. "And the others?" He'd noticed them then. The 2 orcs I'd killed yesterday, their bodies already beginning to bloat in the heat, not far from where we crouched. "Yes, my lord." With that, he indicated my bloodied rebar. "Mostly. I used a rock for the first one. Had to hit it 11 times before it stopped moving." Something changed in his expression. Not quite a smile, but a shift in the set of his mouth that might have been approval. He reached out with one gauntleted hand, and I flinched instinctively, but he only touched my shoulder, carefully, as if afraid he might break me. "You will come with us, Torvin Raid." The Blood Angels have need of boys like you. I didn't understand at first. Need of us for what? Servants, laborers. I'd heard that Space Marines had armies of chapter serfs, mortals who served them in exchange for protection. That seemed like a good trade. Better than dying in the ash, anyway. "Thank you, my lord," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "I'll serve well, I promise." That's when he said the words that changed everything. "You will serve better than you know. If you survive, you will become one of us. Adeptus Astartes, a space marine. An angel of death in service to the Emperor of mankind." I stared at him, not comprehending. Become like him? That was impossible. You couldn't become a space marine. They were different, made in laboratories, born in vats, grown from sacred Jain seed in the fortress monasteries that orbited Holy Terra. They weren't people, not really. They were weapons, angels, gods. I'm just... "You are young enough," he said, cutting off my protest. "Your body has not yet begun the changes that would make the transformation impossible. You are male. You have proven yourself in combat, shown the will to survive, the strength to kill when killing is necessary. These are the qualities we seek." "But I'm nobody," I whispered. "A hive rat. My parents died in the first attack. I don't even know if I have any brothers or sisters left alive." "None of that matters now. What matters is what you can become, what you will become if your body accepts the gene seed." He stood, pulling me up with him as if I weighed nothing. "We leave within the hour. Gather what you wish to bring, but know that you will have no need of possessions where we are taking you. Gather your memories instead. Remember this world, this moment, the blood on your hands and the ash in your lungs. Remember what it feels like to be human and afraid and small, because you will never feel those things again." I didn't gather anything. I had nothing to gather. The clothes on my back were all I owned, and they were more holes than fabric anyway. Instead, I followed the Space Marine back to the drop pod, where 30 other children were already waiting, their faces streaked with dirt and dried blood, their eyes wide with the same mixture of terror and wonder that I felt churning in my gut. The oldest looked about 14. The youngest might have been 10. All boys, all survivors, all marked by violence in ways that showed in how they held themselves, the wariness in their eyes, the quick, precise movements of people who'd learned to expect death from any direction. No one spoke. What was there to say? We were being taken from everything we'd ever known, carried off to a future we couldn't imagine by angels we barely understood. Some of the boys cried silently, tears cutting clean tracks through the grime on their faces. Others stared straight ahead, their expressions locked in the blank mask that soldiers wear when they're trying not to think about what comes next. I found myself looking at my hands instead, at the blood dried black under my fingernails, at the calluses from 6 days of wielding improvised weapons, at the burn scars from where plasma discharge had caught my sleeve. These were the hands of a child who'd been forced to become a killer. Soon, they would be the hands of something else entirely. The drop pod's interior was all harsh angles and emergency restraints designed for speed and efficiency rather than comfort. We were strapped in by chapter serfs, humans who moved with the careful precision of people who'd spent their lives around space marines. None of them met our eyes. None of them spoke except to give terse instructions. Strap in tight, don't touch the panels. If you vomit, aim for the waste receptacle. The journey to the Blood Angels battle barge was a blur of pressure and noise and terror. The drop pod's ascent was nothing like the graceful rise of a shuttle. It was violent, brutal, a controlled explosion that threw us into the sky with enough force to make my vision go gray at the edges. I felt my back teeth crack together, hard enough to taste blood again. Felt my organs pressing against my spine as we climbed. Some of the boys did vomit, their retching lost in the roar of the engines. Others prayed, whispering litanies to the Emperor that I didn't know the words to. I just held on and tried not to pass out. The moment when we broke atmosphere was worse. The sudden absence of resistance. The floating sensation as gravity let go, the way my stomach tried to climb out through my mouth. Then the magnetic clamps of the battle barge's landing bay caught us, and we were pulled in, the whole pod shaking as it was drawn through the void and into the massive ship that would carry us away from everything we'd ever known. When the doors opened, we were in hell. Not literally, though at 12 years old I didn't have the sophistication to recognize the difference. But it looked like the hell that the missionary priests had described in their sermons. A vast cathedral of steel and darkness, lit by flickering lumen strips that cast everything in shades of red and amber. The air tasted of machine oil and incense, and something else, something metallic and organic that I'd later learn was the smell of gene seed processing. Shapes moved in the shadows, servitors with too many limbs or not enough, their lobotomized faces slack with the absence of thought. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear chanting in a language that might have been High Gothic, the words rising and falling in rhythms that suggested prayer, or perhaps condemnation. The blood angel who'd chosen me, whose name I would later learn was Brother Sergeant Dante, led us through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The other boys followed in a ragged line, too stunned to do anything but obey. I noticed that some of them were crying, and that others had that 1,000-yard stare that soldiers get after seeing too much death. We walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, through sections of the ship that I couldn't begin to understand. We passed chambers filled with racks of power armor, each suit standing empty like the shell of some massive insect. We passed through a hall lined with the skulls of fallen battle brothers, their empty eye sockets watching our passage with eternal judgment. We passed training rooms where space marines practiced with weapons that could level buildings, their movements precise despite their size, elegant as dancers and deadly as storms. Finally, we reached a chamber that was different from all the others. Cleaner, brighter. The walls were white, not the stained steel of the rest of the ship, and the air carried the sharp scent of antiseptics rather than incense. Here, the sounds of chanting faded, replaced by the soft hum of machinery and the occasional beep of medical equipment. This was the apothecarian, where boys became something else, or where they died trying. Brother Sergeant Dante stopped at the entrance and turned to face us. His expression was grave, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes that might have been pity. "What happens beyond this door will break you," he said, his voice carrying clearly despite the low tone. "Most of you will not survive. Those who do will not be the same. The child you are now will die, his memories fragmenting, his body transforming into something that can barely be called human anymore. You will know pain beyond anything you experienced in that ash-covered hell we pulled you from. You will beg for death, and death will not come. You will scream until your throat bleeds, and no one will answer your prayers except to inflict more suffering upon you." He paused, letting that sink in. Several of the boys were openly weeping now. One, a gangly kid with burns covering half his face, turned and tried to run. A servitor caught him before he'd gone 3 steps, its mechanical hands gentle but absolutely unyielding as it brought him back to the group. "This is your last chance to refuse," Dante continued. "Any boy who walks away now will be given work as a chap to serve. You will serve the Blood Angels for the rest of your life in other capacities. You will be fed, sheltered, protected. It is not a bad fate. It is not shameful. Many humans would give anything for such an honor. Not one of us moved, not even the boy who tried to run. Because we all understood, even if we couldn't articulate it, that this was the only choice that mattered. To become more than we were. To become something that mattered in a galaxy that ground up ordinary humans like grain beneath millstones. Or to die trying, at least then we'd die for something." "Very well. Dante said. There might have been respect in his voice, might have been sorrow. The Emperor be with you all. The doors to the apothecarian opened. Inside waited the white-armored figures of the apothecaries, their faces hidden behind masks that made them look more machine than man. Between them stood rows of surgical tables, each one equipped with restraints and monitoring equipment and tools I had no names for, and beyond them, in vast vats of nutrient fluid, I could see shapes growing. Organs, I would later learn. The sacred gene seed, cultured from the progenoid glands of fallen blood angels, grown into the implants that would transform us into Astartes, if we survived. The first boy was already being led to a table. His screams would start soon, but not yet, not quite yet. In that moment, standing at the threshold, I had one last thought that was purely my own, uncorrupted by the surgeries and the conditioning and the chemical treatments that would come. I thought about the blue sky of Viridian 3 back before the orcs invaded, back when I was young enough to not understand that beauty and horror could occupy the same space. I thought about my mother's smile, though her face was already beginning to blur in my memory, details fading like watercolors in the rain. I thought about what it meant to be Torven Raid, to be myself, to be human in ways both terrible and precious. Then I took a step forward, and the door closed behind me. The apothecary who received me was called Brother Thaddeus. I learned this not because he introduced himself, but because another apothecary called his name while checking some readout on a medical cogitator. His armor was white as bone, marked with the red blood drop of the chapter and the twin helixes of the apothecarian. When he looked at me, his eyes were different from Dante's. Not cruel exactly, but clinical, assessing, the way a sculptor might look at a rough block of stone, seeing past the surface to the shape that could be carved from within. Subject designation, Raid, Torven, he said, his voice rendered metallic by his helmet's Vox grills. Age 12 standard, height 1 meter 52 centimeters, weight 43 kilograms. Preliminary visual assessment suggests adequate physical development for gene seed compatibility. He circled me slowly while a servitor recorded everything on a data slate. I stood still, trying not to shake, trying to be brave, trying to remember the feeling of driving that rebar through the orc's eye, the moment when I'd chosen to fight rather than die. If I could do that, I could do this, couldn't I? Strip, Thaddeus ordered. I hesitated for maybe 3 seconds before the servitor's mechanical hands began to remove my clothes with efficiency that left no room for modesty or shame. When I was naked, standing on the cold floor of the examination chamber, I felt smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. Smaller than when the orcs had invaded. Smaller than when my parents had died. This wasn't the smallness of fear, though I was afraid. This was the smallness of insignificance, of standing before something vast and ancient and holy, and knowing that I was nothing but raw material to be shaped. The testing began. Blood drawn from my arm in amounts that seemed excessive, filling vial after vial with liquid so dark it was almost black. Skin samples scraped from my shoulder, the scraping going deep enough to make me bite my lip to keep from crying out. Bone density measurements taken with devices that sent vibrations deep into my skeleton, making my teeth ache. Neural scans that required me to lie absolutely still, while machines I couldn't see mapped the structure of my brain, recording every synapse and dendrite. Through it all, Thaddeus narrated his findings to the servitor in language I barely understood. Terms like telomere stability and mitochondrial count and zygote compatibility markers. Numbers that meant nothing to me but apparently meant everything to him. Other boys were being processed in other chambers. I could hear them through the walls. The sound of clinical examination gave way, eventually to screaming. Not all of it from children. Some of the screams came from older voices, adolescents perhaps, who'd been here longer, who'd already begun the transformation. "You will be placed in isolation," Thaddeus announced after what felt like hours of testing. "Standard preconditioning protocol. Duration, approximately 3 months, subject to modification based on psychological resilience and chemical compatibility results." 3 months in isolation. The words didn't register at first. Then the servitor was leading me away, down a corridor even more sterile than the examination room, to a cell that would become my entire world. The isolation chamber was 2 meters by 3 meters, just large enough to lie down in, to take 4 paces in any direction before hitting a wall. The walls were smooth, gray, unmarked. There was a waste reclamation unit in one corner, a nutrient dispenser in another. A thin mattress on the floor, though calling it a mattress was generous. It was more like a padded board, and that was all. No windows, no screens, no books or games or any form of entertainment. Just gray walls and gray floor and gray ceiling, lit by a light that never changed, never dimmed, never gave any indication of whether it was day or night or any hour in between. Time stopped having meaning almost immediately. I tried to keep count at first, scratching marks on the wall with my fingernail, but I kept losing track. Had I slept once since the last mark, or twice? Had I eaten 3 times, or 4? The dispenser gave me nutrient paste at irregular intervals, never on a schedule I could predict. Water came from a spigot, lukewarm and tasting of metal. The door opened 3 times a day. Maybe. I think it was 3 times, but I couldn't be sure. Each time a servitor would enter, silent and mechanical, and inject me with something. The injections burned. Not like fire, but like ice. A cold spreading through my veins that made my teeth chatter and my muscles seize. My body fought it at first, my immune system recognizing the foreign chemicals as hostile. I vomited. I convulsed. I spent hours curled around my aching stomach, feeling like something was trying to claw its way out from the inside. But the injections kept coming, and slowly, gradually, my body stopped fighting, started accepting. The chemicals were neural dampeners, I would later learn, combined with gene seed primers that began to restructure my body at the cellular level. They suppressed my capacity for strong emotion, dulled my responses, made everything feel distant and unreal. But more than that, they started to change me. My thoughts became slower, more methodical. I found myself thinking in patterns I didn't recognize, running through calculations and assessments that had nothing to do with my personality. Combat scenarios played out in my head unbidden, tactical considerations for situations I'd never encountered. I started seeing the isolation cell in terms of defensive positions and kill zones. One corner offered marginally better coverage than the others. The door was the obvious point of ingress, but the nutrient dispenser was a potential weakness if an enemy had cutting equipment. These weren't my thoughts. They couldn't be, but they came from my head, and eventually I stopped trying to reject them. The whispers started sometime in the 2nd month, or what I thought was the 2nd month. Voices just at the edge of hearing, speaking in High Gothic, the formal language of the Imperium that I'd only ever heard in prayers. I couldn't make out individual words at first, just the cadence, the rhythm of devotion and obedience and service. The litany of the blood, the benediction of the blade, the catechism of sacrifice. Eventually, I started to understand fragments, words seeping into my consciousness like water through cloth. Duty, honor, gene seed, emperor, purity. They were being broadcast, I realized much later. Played at frequencies below conscious hearing, designed to bypass my waking mind and speak directly to the parts of my brain that were being restructured by the chemicals. Hypno-conditioning, indoctrination, the systematic erasure of who I'd been and the installation of what I needed to become. I tried to resist, for a while. I recited my own name like a prayer. Torvin Raid. Torvin Raid. I am Torvin Raid from Hive Tertius on Viridian 3. My mother's name was Sarah. My father was Marcus. I had a sister named Lila who liked to sing. I am myself. I am human. I am real. But the memories slipped away despite my efforts. My mother's face became indistinct, features blurring until I could recall only the impression of kindness, not the details that made her her. My father disappeared entirely, leaving only a name and the vague sense that I should feel something about his absence. Lila. Had I had a sister? I couldn't remember. The whispers told me different stories. They told me about the Emperor, the Master of Mankind, the Lord of 10,000 Worlds. They told me about the Blood Angels, the Ninth Legion, sons of the angel Sanguinius, who stood between humanity and the darkness. They told me about duty and service and sacrifice, about the glory of giving yourself completely to a cause greater than any individual life. And they told me about what I would become, what I must become, if humanity was to survive in a galaxy that wanted nothing more than to devour it whole. I was alone in that cell for 93 days. I know this because Thaddeus told me later, reading it off a medical slate with the same clinical detachment he'd shown during my initial examination. 93 days of isolation, chemical treatment, and psychological conditioning. By the end, I barely remembered my own name. But I could recite the Blood Angels chapter litanies from memory, could break down the theoretical operation of a bolter in my head, could visualize the tactical deployment patterns of a standard Astartes tactical squad with perfect clarity. When they came to retrieve me, I didn't recognize myself. The servitors led me back to the Apothecarian. The other boys from Viridian 3 were already there, those who'd survived the conditioning. There had been 30 of us. Now there were 22. I didn't ask what had happened to the others. Part of me couldn't remember who the others had been. Part of me simply didn't care, and that absence of caring was perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. We were different now. I could see it in their eyes, the way they moved, the wild desperation that had marked us as survivors of an orc invasion had been replaced by something colder, more focused. We stood in formation without being told to, spacing ourselves at exact intervals, our bodies finding the proper angles automatically. When Thaddeus entered, we all turned to face him in perfect synchronization. "Aspirants," he addressed us, his metallic voice carrying through the chamber. "You have completed preliminary conditioning. Your minds have been prepared, your bodies have been primed. Now begins the true transformation, the implantation of the sacred gene seed, the organs that will remake you in the image of the Primarch Sanguinius, blessed be his name." He gestured to the surgical tables behind him. 19 organs, 19 gifts from the Emperor himself. Each one a miracle of bioengineering, created from genetic material older than the Imperium itself. Each one a test that will strain your body to its absolute limits. Each one a chance to fail, to reject the gene seed, to die screaming on these tables. No one moved. No one made a sound. We'd been conditioned to accept this, to embrace it. The fear was still there, buried deep where the neural dampeners couldn't quite reach, but it was distant now, secondary to the growing sense of purpose that the whispers had instilled in us. "Phase 1 begins now," Thaddeus said. "The secondary heart. The maintainer. The simplest of the implants, and yet many aspirants fail here. Their bodies unable to accept even this basic modification. We shall see which of you are truly worthy to become blood angels, which of you will survive to proceed to phase 2, and which of you will provide only corpses to feed back into the chapter's reclamation systems." The servitors moved among us, selecting aspirants at random, or perhaps not randomly. Perhaps according to some assessment I couldn't perceive, some evaluation of our genetic compatibility or psychological resilience that only the apothecaries could measure. I was chosen third. The surgical table was cold against my back. Restraints closed around my wrists and ankles, across my chest and forehead, holding me absolutely immobile. I couldn't even turn my head to see what instruments Thaddeus was preparing, though I could hear them. The click of metal on metal, the hum of an auto suture, the soft whisper of a nerve stapler being tested. "You will be conscious for this," Thaddeus informed me, his voice coming from somewhere above and behind my head. "The neural architecture requires precise calibration during implantation. Anesthesia would interfere with the necessary synaptic responses. You may scream if you wish. All aspirants do." I felt the first incision like a line of ice drawn across my chest. Not pain exactly, not yet. The neural dampeners were doing their work, transforming agony into mere sensation, urgent but bearable. But I could feel everything: the parting of skin, the careful cutting through layers of muscle, the manipulation of ribs as Thaddeus created space within my chest cavity for something that wasn't supposed to be there. The secondary heart was grown from gene seed in a nutrient vat, cultured over months until it reached the appropriate size. When Thaddeus lifted it into my line of sight, I saw it pulsing in his gloved hands. Smaller than my original heart, yes, but perfect in its construction. Veins and arteries already terminated in the precise connections that would need to be grafted to my circulatory system. Muscle tissue that contracted with steady rhythm even though it wasn't yet receiving electrical signals from any nervous system. This was the gene seed made manifest. The physical embodiment of the Emperor's will, crafted from the genetic template of a Primarch who died 10,000 years before my birth. "Remain absolutely still," Thaddeus commanded, though the restraints made movement impossible anyway. "Any resistance at this stage will cause rejection." The secondary heart descended toward my chest. I felt it being positioned, felt the first tentative connections being made. Thaddeus worked with a speed and precision that suggested he'd done this procedure hundreds, perhaps thousands of times. His hands never hesitated, never fumbled. Each connection was perfect, each suture exact. The moment when he activated the new heart was unlike anything I'd experienced. One moment, I had a single heartbeat, steady and familiar. The next, there was a second rhythm, slightly out of sync with the first. My body spasmed against the restraints, both hearts stuttering as they tried to find a pattern that worked. The neural dampeners failed. Pain crashed through me like a tidal wave, every nerve in my chest screaming in protest. This wasn't supposed to be here. My immune system recognized the new organ as foreign, as hostile, and mobilized everything it had to attack it. I was dying. I could feel it happening, feel my body trying to reject the gift it had been given. Then Thaddeus injected something directly into my bloodstream, bypassing the new heart entirely. The chemical hit my system like a hammer, and suddenly the pain receded. Not gone, but manageable. My heartbeats began to synchronize, the secondary heart's rhythm adjusting to match my original. 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 2 hearts, beating as one. The auto suture closed my chest with mechanical efficiency, sealing flesh and muscle and skin in a matter of seconds. When the restraints released, I sat up slowly, my hand going automatically to my chest. I could feel both hearts through the skin, could distinguish the separate pulses. The secondary heart was smaller, yes, beating faster to compensate. Together, they were more efficient than my original heart alone, able to pump more blood with less effort. I had taken the first step. 19 more awaited. I looked around the apothecarium. The boy on the table next to mine wasn't moving. His chest was open, the secondary heart visible within, but it had stopped beating. His original heart had stopped as well. Rejection, fatal and immediate. The servitors were already moving to harvest what they could from his corpse. reclaiming the gene seed, recycling his body into proteins that could be used for the next generation of aspirants. 22 aspirants had entered this phase. Only 19 walked out. They gave us 3 days to recover. 3 days spent in a medical bay where every bodily function was monitored, where chemical compounds were dripped into our veins to help our bodies accept the new organs, where we learned the first terrible lesson of what we were becoming. Individual identity mattered less than the preservation of the gene seed. The aspirant who died wasn't mourned, wasn't even named in the reports I overheard. He was simply a failure, a waste of resources, his only value in the genetic material that could be recovered from his corpse. I tried to feel something about that. Horror, perhaps, or grief. But the conditioning had done its work too well. I felt only acceptance, and underneath that, a cold determination. I would not fail. I would not waste the chapter's resources. I would become what they needed me to be. Phase 2 began with agony that made the secondary heart implantation seem gentle by comparison. The os modula, a small organ implanted in the chest cavity that secreted growth hormones and caused the bones to absorb ceramic-based chemicals from our diet. Our skeletons were going to be reinforced, transformed into armor plating that could stop bullets and turn blades. The theory was simple. The reality was torment. They changed our diet immediately after the implantation. The food the servitors brought was dense with calcium and ceramic compounds, thick with minerals that tasted like drinking powdered metal. Each meal was like trying to swallow concrete. But we ate because we were ordered to, and because our bodies had begun to crave the chemicals that would fuel our transformation. The growth started within a week. My ribs, first. I could feel them lengthening, thickening, beginning to fuse into a solid cage of reinforced bone that would protect my organs better than any human skeleton could. The pain was constant, a deep ache that radiated from every bone in my body, but worst in my chest where the changes were most dramatic. Nights were the worst. I would lie in my cot, feeling my skeleton creak and shift, hearing the sounds my body made as it reshaped itself according to the template encoded in the gene seed. Sometimes I screamed. I wasn't alone in that. The medical bay echoed with the cries of aspirants whose bodies were being broken down and rebuilt. The apothecaries didn't try to comfort us. Comfort would have been pointless. This was simply what happened. What had to happen if we were to become Astartes. Phase 3 followed close behind. The Biscopea, another chest cavity implant that worked in conjunction with the os modula. This one stimulated muscle growth, grotesque and unnatural, forcing our bodies to develop strength far beyond human norms. I watched my arms grow thicker, muscles appearing beneath my skin that I'd never had before. My shoulders broadened until I had to turn sideways to fit through some doorways. My legs became powerful enough to support the additional mass, thighs like tree trunks, calves carved from stone. It hurt. Everything hurt. Every movement pulled at muscles that were still developing, still integrating themselves into my frame. My body burned through calories at an impossible rate. We ate constantly, meals arriving every few hours, and still I was always hungry. Some aspirants failed here. Their bodies unable to handle the metabolic strain, burning themselves out in a matter of days. Organs shutting down, muscles cannibalizing themselves. 3 more died. 16 remained. Among the failures was a boy I'd almost remembered from before the conditioning. He'd been from Viridian 3 too. I thought his name might have been Marcus, or maybe it was Matthias. The chemicals had made my memory unreliable, fragmenting connections that had once been solid. He lasted 6 days after the Biscopea implantation before his enhanced muscles began to tear themselves apart from the inside. The apothecaries tried to save him, pumping him full of stabilizers and growth suppressants, but his gene seed had mutated somewhere along the line. A flaw in the replication process, perhaps, or simple bad luck. Either way, he died screaming, his body literally tearing itself to pieces as mutated muscle tissue grew without limit or control. They recycled him like all the others, harvested what gene seed could be salvaged, fed his biomass back into the chapter's systems. Within 6 hours, there was no evidence he'd ever existed except a notation in Thaddeus's medical logs. By the end of Phase 3, I was unrecognizable. Taller, broader, heavier. My hands were twice the size they'd been, fingers thick with muscle. When I looked in the polished metal surface that served as a mirror in the medical bay, I saw a stranger. The face was mine, technically. Same eyes, same bone structure, but the proportions were all wrong. Too angular, too severe. I looked older than 13, though not adult. Something in between. Something wrong. One night, after a particularly brutal session of muscular development that had left me barely able to move, I lay in my cot and tried to remember Viridian 3. Tried to picture the hive where I'd grown up, the narrow corridors and perpetual gloom, the smell of corpse starch and chemical rain. But the memories wouldn't come. Or they came wrong, distorted, like looking at something through clouded glass. Had the sky been grey, or had there been a sky at all? I remembered blood in the dust. I remembered an orc's face as I drove a piece of rebar through its eye. I remembered a space marine's red armor against ash-colored ruins. But the connective tissue between those moments was gone, dissolved by chemicals and conditioning and the simple, overwhelming nature of what was being done to my body. I was forgetting who I'd been. Not quickly, not all at once, but gradually, inexorably. Like watching a tide erase footprints from sand. And the worst part was that I couldn't make myself care as much as I knew I should. Phase 4 brought the hemastomen, a tiny organ implanted in the major blood vessels, so small I couldn't see it during the surgery, even though I was awake for the procedure. Its function was to change my blood chemistry, making it more efficient at oxygen transport, improving clotting factors, altering the color to a brighter, more vibrant red. The change happened over days. I felt it spreading through my circulatory system like fire, each heartbeat carrying the modified blood further into my body. My dual hearts pumped in perfect synchrony now, pushing the enhanced blood through vessels that were themselves being restructured to handle the increased efficiency. I could feel it in my head, a clarity of thought that hadn't been there before. In my muscles, which responded faster, moved with more precision. In my lungs, which seemed to extract oxygen from the air with impossible efficiency. But the Phase 5 implant was what really changed things. The Larraman's organ, named for some ancient geneticist whose work had contributed to the creation of the Space Marines. It was complex, requiring intricate connection to the circulatory system, threads of synthetic tissue woven through my existing blood vessels like golden wire through cloth. The surgery took 6 hours. I was awake for all of it, feeling every connection being made, every suture placed. Thaddeus worked in silence, his movements economical and precise. Occasionally, he would pause to check readouts on a medical cogitator, making micro-adjustments based on data I couldn't interpret. When it was done, when the Larraman's organ was fully integrated and active, he cut my forearm. Just a shallow slice, nothing serious. The wound bled for perhaps 3 seconds. Then something happened. The blood seemed to thicken, to coagulate faster than natural clotting could explain. Within 10 seconds, the wound had sealed itself. Within 30, there was only a thin line of scar tissue. Within 2 minutes, even the scar was fading. Larraman cells, Thaddeus explained, his voice carrying the same clinical detachment it always did. Released by the organ in response to tissue damage, they work in conjunction with normal platelets to seal wounds rapidly, preventing blood loss and reducing infection risk. A space marine with a functioning Larraman's organ can survive injuries that would kill a normal human through blood loss alone. He made another cut, deeper this time. I watched with detached fascination as my enhanced blood began the sealing process again. This wound took longer, maybe a minute instead of seconds, but it still closed far faster than any human healing. I could feel the Larraman's cells working, could sense them as distinct entities in my bloodstream, waiting for their purpose to be triggered. Phase 5 had claimed 2 more aspirants. One's body simply rejected the Larraman's organ, his immune system attacking it despite the immunosuppressants we were being given. He died of internal bleeding when the organ failed catastrophically, rupturing blood vessels throughout his torso. The other suffered some kind of genetic incompatibility that caused the Larraman cells to activate randomly, forming clots throughout his circulatory system. He had a stroke at 14 years old. His brain starved of oxygen as mutated healing cells blocked the vessels that should have been feeding it. 14 aspirants remained. We'd lost more than half our number, and we weren't even a third of the way through the implantation process. I tried not to think about the odds, tried not to calculate survival probabilities, but the conditioning had made me tactical, analytical. I couldn't help running the numbers. If the attrition rate continued at the same pace, maybe 4 or 5 of us would make it to the end. Maybe fewer. The realization should have terrified me. Instead, I found myself grimly determined to be among the survivors. Whatever it took, whatever I had to become. The Emperor demanded it, the chapter required it, and Torvin Raid, whoever he had been, was already too far gone to turn back. The weeks blurred together, one surgery bleeding into another, recovery periods that never felt quite long enough before the next phase began. They were careful, the apothecaries, precise in their timing, monitoring our bodies constantly for signs of rejection or mutation, but they were also relentless. There was a schedule to maintain, a process that had been refined over 10,000 years, and deviation from that process led to failure. Phase 6 marked the point where things became truly alien. The catalepsian node. A small piece of augmented neural tissue drilled directly into the base of my skull, positioned at the occipital bone where it could interface with the brain stem. I felt the drill bite into bone, felt the pressure as Thaddeus carefully created the hole that would receive the implant. The neural dampeners kept the pain manageable, but there was no dampening the sense of violation, the fundamental wrongness of having my skull opened and foreign matter inserted directly into my brain. The node itself was smaller than I'd expected. A nodule of synthetic neurons, bioengineered tissue that would integrate with my existing neural architecture and fundamentally alter the way my brain processed rest and consciousness. When it activated, several hours after the surgery, I felt my awareness shift in a way I couldn't quite describe. I was awake. But part of my brain was also asleep, resting, regenerating. I could feel the distinction, could sense different portions of my consciousness cycling through active and inactive states. It was like being 2 people at once, one awake and alert while the other dreamed. The catalepsian node allows space marines to function without true sleep, Thaddeus explained during one of his periodic examinations. Parts of your brain will rest while others remain active. You'll never need more than a few minutes of actual unconsciousness. Days, weeks, even months of continuous operation become possible. But the node was only the beginning of Phase 6. The real purpose was what came next. The hypnotherapy. The conditioning that would reshape not just my body, but my mind itself. They placed me in the hypnomat, a machine that looked like a combination of a restraint chair and a medical scanner, all smooth surfaces and subtle induction coils. Straps held me immobile while neural interfaces touched my temples, my forehead, the base of my skull where the catalepsean node had been implanted. Visual and oral stimuli will awaken unconscious metabolic control, Thaddeus said, reading from a procedural slate. Subliminal instruction will be delivered directly to the catalepsean node, bypassing conscious awareness. You will learn skills, tactics, doctrine. The Blood Angel's combat methodologies will be uploaded directly into your neural architecture. You may experience disorientation, memory fragmentation, or personality shifts. These are normal and expected. He didn't wait for acknowledgement before activating the machine. The world dissolved into light and sound and information flowing directly into my brain. I saw things I'd never witnessed. Battles from the Great Crusade, recorded by servo skulls and preserved in the chapter archives. The fall of some fortress I'd never heard of, seen from the perspective of a Blood Angel tactical marine, his bolter bucking in his hands as he fired at enemies I couldn't properly perceive. The information was pure sensation, downloaded into my neurons as if I'd lived it myself. I learned the proper grip for a chainsword, the exact pressure needed to trigger a bolter's firing mechanism. I absorbed the Codex Astartes, the sacred text of Space Marine combat doctrine, its tactical deployments and strategic considerations burning themselves into my memory. I felt my mind being rewritten, new pathways forming, old connections dissolving. The boy who'd survived Viridian 3 was being erased, overwritten with combat data and battlefield experience I'd never actually earned. The litany of hate, the benediction of the blade, the Blood Angel's own unique doctrines, variations on standard Codex tactics that reflected their Primarch's combat philosophy. All of it pouring into my skull in a torrent of raw information that threatened to drown everything else. I don't know how long I was in the hypnomat. Time lost meaning, consciousness fragmenting into scattered moments of awareness between the downloads. When they finally pulled me out, released the restraints and let me stand on shaking legs, I was different. I knew things I shouldn't know. When I looked at a tactical display showing a theoretical urban combat scenario, I saw firing lanes and kill zones, identified optimal positions for heavy weapon emplacements, and predicted enemy movement patterns with a precision that had nothing to do with training and everything to do with direct neural programming. I could recite the Blood Angel's founding from memory, name every significant battle the chapter had fought in the last 3,000 years, describe the tactical disposition of a standard assault squad, down to the exact loadout each Marine carried. But I couldn't remember my mother's face, couldn't recall what my home on Viridian 3 had looked like. Those memories had been deemed non-essential, irrelevant to my function as a space marine, and the hypno-conditioning had simply deleted them to make room for what mattered. Phase 7 brought 3 more implants in rapid succession. The preomnor, an advanced digestive organ implanted in my chest cavity, connected to my esophagus and serving as a pre-stomach that could neutralize toxins before they reached my actual stomach. The surgery was brutal, requiring Thaddeus to reroute my entire digestive tract to accommodate the new organ. For 3 days after the operation, I couldn't eat solid food, surviving on nutrient paste while my body adapted to its new configuration. Then the omophagia, a strange nerve bundle attached to my spine and wired into both my brain and my stomach. Its purpose made me uncomfortable in ways the other implants hadn't, even through the haze of conditioning. The omophagia allows you to absorb memories through consumption of flesh, Thaddeus explained, his tone suggesting this was perfectly normal. Genetic information, experience, knowledge, all encoded in neural tissue and accessible through eating. Many chapters use this capability for reconnaissance. A space marine can consume the brain of an enemy commander and extract tactical information directly from their memories. The thought of eating someone's brain, of gaining their memories through consumption, should have revolted me, but the conditioning had done its work. I felt only curiosity, and underneath that, a strange hunger. Not physical hunger, though my enhanced metabolism kept me perpetually eager for food. This was something else, a desire to know, to understand, to acquire knowledge through the most direct means possible. They tested the omophaga with prepared samples. Protein extracts derived from gene seed, carefully formulated to contain harmless information. I ate and tasted more than flavor. I tasted memory, fragments of experience that weren't mine, data encoded in the cellular structure of the meat. It was disorienting and fascinating in equal measure. The third implant of Phase 7 was the multi-lung, a third lung, augmented and enhanced, wedged into my chest cavity alongside my existing lungs and my preomnor. The organ was a marvel of bioengineering, capable of filtering toxins from the air, extracting oxygen from low-pressure environments, even functioning underwater by absorbing dissolved oxygen directly from the water itself. The surgery nearly killed me. My chest cavity was crowded now, packed with organs that had no business existing together. Both hearts, the secondary and my original, beating in synchronization. The preomnor, bulky and strange, both existing lungs and now a third. The Larraman's organ threaded through it all. My ribs were barely holding everything in, the fused bone cage straining under the pressure. For 2 days after the multi-lung implantation, I couldn't breathe properly. My body kept trying to use the new lung like my original lungs, sending neural signals that didn't match the organ's actual function. I gasped like a fish out of water, my face turning purple, servitors standing ready with emergency oxygen in case I finally suffocated. Then, suddenly, it clicked. My brain figured out the pattern, integrated the multi-lung into my respiratory system properly. I took a breath and felt it differently than before. Felt all 3 lungs working together, extracting oxygen with impossible efficiency. The apothecaries tested me by filling my chamber with toxic gas, concentrations that would have killed a normal human in seconds. I breathed it without discomfort, the multi-lungs filtration system scrubbing the poisons out before they could reach my bloodstream. They submerged me in a tank of water, holding me under for 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour. I didn't need to surface. The multi-lung pulled dissolved oxygen from the water. My enhanced blood carried it to my tissues. My dual hearts pumped steadily in a rhythm that never faltered. I was becoming something that couldn't drown, couldn't be poisoned, couldn't be stopped by environmental hazards that would kill any normal human. But each implant came with a price. Another aspirant died during the multi-lung surgery, his chest cavity simply unable to accommodate the additional organ. His ribs fractured under the pressure, bone fragments piercing his hearts and lungs. He bled out on the surgical table while Thaddeus worked frantically to save him, but there was too much damage, too many organs ruptured. 13 remained. Phase 8 brought changes to my senses that made the earlier implant seem almost mundane. The oculobe first, a tiny implant at the base of my optic nerve, so small that the surgery took only minutes. But its effects were transformative. My vision sharpened until I could count individual threads in cloth from across a room. Colors became more vivid, distinctions more pronounced. I could see in near darkness, my eyes adjusting automatically to changes in light levels with mechanical precision. In bright light, my pupils constricted to pinpricks. In shadow, they dilated until my eyes looked black. I could track fast-moving objects with ease, watching bolt rounds in flight during live-fire training exercises. Could spot camouflaged targets at extreme ranges. My depth perception became perfect, able to judge distances to within centimeters, even at 100 meters. Then came the lineman's ear, and suddenly I could hear everything. The lineman's ear wasn't actually in my ear. It was a complex modification to my entire auditory system, including my inner ear, my cochlea, and the parts of my brain that processed sound. The surgery required them to essentially rebuild my ears from the inside, leaving me temporarily deaf while the implant integrated. When my hearing returned, it was overwhelming. I could hear servitors moving in corridors 3 levels away, could distinguish individual heartbeats in a room full of aspirants, could identify people by the sound of their breathing, by the rhythm of their footsteps. The apothecaries tested me by playing sounds at different frequencies, from subsonic rumbles below 20 Hz to ultrasonic frequencies above 20,000. I heard all of it, the entire spectrum laid out before me in perfect clarity. More than that, I never got dizzy anymore. The Lyman's ear included improvements to my vestibular system, the organs responsible for balance and spatial orientation. I could be spun in circles, thrown end over end, subjected to violent acceleration in any direction, and I never lost my sense of up and down, never experienced vertigo or motion sickness. But with the enhanced hearing came a curse. I heard too much. Every sound, no matter how small, registered with perfect clarity. The hum of machinery that most people filtered out unconsciously was like thunder in my ears. The breathing of others was loud as windstorms. I spent days in agony, unable to sleep despite the catalepsian node's assistance, my brain overwhelmed by sensory input it hadn't learned to process yet. Thaddeus gave me neural training, teaching me to filter sounds consciously, to focus on what mattered and ignore the rest. It took weeks of practice, but eventually I learned to control it. Learned to dial my hearing up or down as needed, to focus on specific frequencies while dampening others. The last implant of Phase 8 was the Susan membrane. Another neural modification, this one growing within my brain itself, spreading through my cerebrum like a second layer of gray matter. The membrane's purpose was to put me in suspended animation during extreme trauma, a failsafe that could keep me alive for years if necessary. They tested it by inducing a state of clinical death, stopping my hearts and flooding my system with toxins that should have killed me. I felt myself slipping away, consciousness fragmenting, my dual hearts going silent. Then the Susan membrane activated and everything stopped. Not death exactly, but something close to it. A state of profound hibernation where my body's processes slowed to almost nothing. Days passed. I was told later it had been 5 days, though I experienced no sensation of time passing. When they revived me with the appropriate chemical triggers, it was like waking from a dreamless sleep. My body perfectly preserved despite days without food or water or oxygen. 2 more aspirants failed in Phase 8. One's optic nerves couldn't handle the oculobe, the enhanced vision causing feedback that burned out his visual cortex. He survived, technically, but blind and brain damaged. The chapter turned him into a servitor, his body useful even if his mind was gone. The other suffered a catastrophic reaction to the Susan membrane. The implant spread too far, too fast, consuming neural tissue that should have been left alone. He fell into suspended animation and couldn't be revived, his brain too damaged by the rampant growth to support consciousness even with medical intervention. They harvested his gene seed and recycled the rest. 11 aspirants remained, 11 out of 30 who'd started this process. I tried to feel something about the losses. Tried to mourn the boys who died, the children we'd all been before the chapter found us. But the hypno-conditioning had done its work too well. When I thought about the failures, I felt only acceptance. They had been weak. Their gene seed had been flawed. Better to discover that now during training than in combat when their failure might endanger their brothers. This was necessary. This was right. This was the Emperor's will, testing us and finding some wanting. The worthy would survive. The weak would be recycled, and I would be among the worthy. I had to be, because the alternative was unthinkable. The next phase brought something worse than pain. It brought the systematic destruction of my remaining humanity. Phase 9, the last of the early implants, the ones that could be done while I was still young enough for my body to be truly malleable. 5 organs in rapid succession, each one stranger than the last, each one pushing me further from human and closer to whatever I was becoming. The oolitic kidney first. A third kidney, larger and more efficient than my original 2, implanted in my lower back with connections to my existing renal system. Its purpose was to filter toxins more effectively, to allow me to survive exposures that would shut down human kidneys in minutes. They tested it by poisoning me. Deliberately. Compounds injected directly into my bloodstream that should have caused kidney failure within hours. My original kidneys began to shut down, their function degrading as the toxins overwhelmed their capacity. But the oolitic kidney processed everything they couldn't handle, scrubbing my blood clean faster than the poisons could accumulate. I survived. Barely. Sweating toxins through my pores, urinating waste products at a rate that should have been impossible. My new kidney working at maximum capacity to save my life from poisons the apothecaries had deliberately introduced. Space Marines must be able to survive in any environment, Thaddeus explained while I convulsed on a medical cot, my body trying to purge itself of the testing compounds. Toxic atmospheres, chemical weapons, drinking water contaminated with industrial runoff. The oolitic kidney makes this possible. You could drink drain cleaner and survive, given enough time for the kidney to process the toxins. Next came the neuroglottis, 2 small nodules implanted in my nasal cavity and connected directly to my brain. The surgery was delicate, requiring Thaddeus to go in through my nostrils with tools that felt like they were scraping directly on the inside of my skull. When it was done, when the implants had integrated with my olfactory nerve, I could taste things without eating them, could analyze chemical composition through smell alone, identifying poisons and pollutants and compounds with a precision that matched advanced scanning equipment. They tested me with samples of various substances. Food, to start. I could identify every ingredient, every preservative, every additive by scent alone. Water from different sources, each one with its own chemical signature that I could break down into component elements. Then they moved on to toxins. I learned to detect nerve gas at concentrations too low for instruments to measure reliably. Could identify the presence of biological weapons by the unique chemical markers the pathogens produced. Could taste radiation in the air, a sharp metallic sensation that triggered automatic warnings in my augmented nervous system. But the strangest implant of Phase 9 was the mucranoid, a dermal gland distributed throughout my skin, thousands of tiny nodes that could be triggered to secrete a protective mucus across my entire body. The surgery took 2 days, the apothecaries injecting gene seed carriers into my skin all over my body, each injection creating a node that would grow and integrate with my dermal tissue. When it activated for the first time, triggered by exposure to vacuum conditions in a test chamber, I felt my skin begin to weep. Not sweat exactly, but something thicker, more substantial. The mucus formed a protective layer across my entire body, sealing my skin, blocking radiation and preventing moisture loss. I could survive in hard vacuum for 15 minutes with the mucranoid active, the protective secretion buying time that would be impossible otherwise. The Becher's gland came next, and this one made me dangerous in ways I hadn't been before. 2 glands, one near each salivary gland, capable of synthesizing and storing powerful acid. When I activated them, willing the glands to release their contents, my saliva became corrosive enough to eat through metal. They tested it by having me spit on plasteel plates. The acid ate through in seconds, leaving smoking holes in the armor. I could spit at an enemy's face, blind them and melt their flesh in the same motion, could corrode locks and hinges, disable equipment, create breaches in sealed doors. Another weapon in an arsenal that was growing larger with each implant. The final implant of Phase 9 was the progenoid glands. 2 of them, one in my neck and one in my chest, each one positioned carefully to avoid the other organs that had been crammed into my body. These were different from the other implants, Thaddeus explained. These weren't for me. They were for the chapter's future. The progenoid glands will mature over the next 5 to 10 years, he said, his metallic voice carrying the weight of ritual. They're absorbing genetic information from every other implant in your body, storing it, refining it. When you die, when you fall in battle serving the Emperor, these glands will be harvested. The gene seed they contain will be used to create the next generation of blood angels. Your genetic legacy will live on through your successors. He paused, his augmented eyes studying me with something that might have been respect. Every space marine is immortal in this way, though your body will eventually fail. Though you will die in service to the Imperium, your gene seed will continue. Other aspirants will receive implants grown from your progenoids. You will live on through them, your strength and your loyalty passed down through generations. This is the Emperor's greatest gift. True immortality, not of the body, but of the gene seed itself. The weight of that settled over me like a physical thing. I was carrying the future of the chapter inside my body. If I failed, if I died before these glands matured, their contents would be lost, wasted. The gene seed that could have created 2 more blood angels would die with me. The responsibility was crushing, and yet somehow it gave me purpose, meaning beyond simple survival. I wasn't just becoming a space marine. I was becoming a link in an unbroken chain stretching back to the Primarch Sanguinius himself. My gene seed traced its lineage directly to the great angel. Blessed be his memory. Everything I was, everything I would become, was built on that foundation. 2 more aspirants died in Phase 9. One's body rejected the progenoid glands catastrophically, his immune system attacking the implants despite every suppression measure the apothecaries employed. He went into anaphylactic shock and died despite their efforts to save him. The other suffered a mutation in the Becher's gland, the acid production running out of control. The corrosive compounds ate through his salivary glands and into his throat, burning away tissue faster than his enhanced healing could repair it. He choked to death on his own melting flesh, blood and acid pouring from his mouth, while the apothecaries watched helplessly. 9 aspirants remained, 9 survivors out of 30 who'd begun this process, who'd been selected from the ashes of Viridian 3 because they'd shown the capacity to kill when necessary, to survive when survival seemed impossible. We'd been chosen for our strength, but strength alone wasn't enough. We needed genetic compatibility, biological resilience, the right combination of factors that couldn't be predicted or controlled. Only tested, only proven through the brutal winnowing of the implantation process. By now, we'd been in the fortress monastery for 8 months. 8 months of surgeries and chemical treatments and hypno-conditioning. 8 months of our bodies being systematically destroyed and rebuilt according to the template encoded in the gene seed. We were taller now, broader. Our bones were ceramite-laced armor plates. Our muscles could tear through steel. We had 3 lungs, 2 hearts, more organs than any human should possess. We could survive toxins that would kill normal humans, could see in darkness, hear across vast distances, taste poisons by scent alone. But we weren't space marines yet. We weren't even close. The hardest phases still lay ahead. The implants that could only be done in adolescence, when our bodies had matured enough to handle modifications that would kill younger children. Phase 10 through 15. The deep organs, the dangerous ones, the implants that killed more aspirants than all the earlier phases combined. I stood in the apothecarian with the 8 other survivors, our enhanced bodies making us look like young adults despite our actual ages. 14 years old, most of us, though some might have been 15 by now. Time had become difficult to track, marked only by surgeries and recovery periods rather than days or weeks. Thaddeus addressed us with his usual clinical detachment, but I thought I detected something else in his voice. Not quite pride, but perhaps acknowledgement. We'd made it further than most, further than he'd probably expected. Phase 10 begins tomorrow, he announced. You will receive 5 organs in rapid succession over the next 6 weeks. This is the most dangerous period of the entire transformation process. More aspirants die here than in all previous phases combined. Your bodies will be stressed to their absolute limits. Some of you will fail. Your gene seed will be harvested and used for the next generation. Those who survive will be closer to true Astartes than any of you have yet achieved. None of us responded. We'd been conditioned to accept whatever came next, to embrace pain and transformation, and even death, if that was the Emperor's will. But underneath the conditioning, underneath the chemical dampening and neural programming, I felt fear. Real fear, the kind that even the hypno-indoctrination couldn't completely suppress. I'd survived 9 phases. 10 through 15 might kill me, and there would be no mercy if I failed. Only recycling, only the cold comfort that my gene seed would serve the chapter even if my body did not. The Emperor protects, the litanies said, but he protects through sacrifice, through suffering, through the transformation of boys into weapons, of humans into posthumans, of flesh into something that could barely be called alive in any traditional sense. And I would endure it, because I had no choice, because I'd come too far to turn back, because somewhere beneath the conditioning and the chemicals and the systematic destruction of my former self, a tiny fragment of Torvin Raid still remained. The boy who'd driven a piece of rebar through an orc's eye, who'd survived in the ash and the blood and the horror of an invaded world, who'd been chosen because he refused to die. That boy was almost gone now, but he wasn't dead yet, and he would survive this too, or he would die trying. The 6 weeks of phases 10 through 15 were later described in my medical files as optimal progression with acceptable complications. That clinical assessment didn't begin to capture what those weeks actually felt like. What it was like to have your body opened repeatedly, to have organs implanted in places where organs had no business existing, to feel yourself being pushed past every threshold of pain and endurance that evolution had deemed survivable. Phase 10 began with a procedure so intrusive that even the neural dampeners couldn't fully mask the sensation. More organs in my already crowded torso, organs with names I could barely pronounce, their functions strange and specific. The details blurred together after a while, one surgery bleeding into another, consciousness fragmenting under the weight of repeated trauma. But I remember specifics. I remember lying on the surgical table while Thaddeus explained what was coming next, his metallic voice never changing tone even as he described procedures that sounded like torture. I remember the moment when my chest cavity was opened for what felt like the 100th time, the familiar sensation of ribs being spread, of organs being shifted aside to make room for something new. I remember the burn of chemical compounds being injected directly into my bloodstream, suppressants and growth factors and compounds whose names I didn't know, all designed to help my body accept what was being done to it. I remember screaming. Despite the conditioning, despite the neural dampeners, despite everything they'd done to make me harder and stronger and less human, I screamed because my body was being violated in ways that no living thing should endure, and some deep part of me that wasn't yet fully corrupted by the transformation still understood that what was happening was wrong. But wrong didn't matter. Only necessary mattered. Only the gene seed mattered. Only becoming what the chapter needed me to become. The organs themselves were technological miracles, each one a masterpiece of bioengineering that had taken the Emperor's finest geneticists decades to perfect. But experiencing them as they were implanted, feeling them integrate with my existing biology, was nightmare made flesh. My body burned through nutrients at a rate that should have been impossible. We ate constantly, meals arriving every few hours, dense protein pastes and vitamin-fortified gruel that tasted like nothing and everything all at once. I was always hungry. My metabolism had been pushed into overdrive by the implantation process, my enhanced organs demanding fuel in quantities that seemed obscene. Sleep became impossible despite the catalepsian node. Not because I wasn't tired, but because my body was changing too rapidly, too constantly. I would lie in my medical cot, feeling organs shifting inside me, feeling my skeleton continuing to grow and fuse and reinforce itself, feeling muscles develop in patterns that had nothing to do with natural growth. The pain was background noise by this point, a constant companion that I'd learned to function through. 3 more aspirants died. One during a routine implantation when his circulatory system simply couldn't handle the additional strain. His hearts stopped despite all efforts to resuscitate him, his enhanced blood pooling uselessly in vessels that no longer had the pressure to move it. Another suffered a cascade failure, multiple organs rejecting simultaneously in a reaction that the apothecaries had never seen before. His body attacked itself from the inside, enhanced immune responses destroying the very implants that were supposed to make him superhuman. The third simply gave up. Not his body, which was handling the transformation adequately, but his mind. The hypno-conditioning had fractured something inside him, left gaps in his neural architecture that allowed despair to take root. He stopped eating, stopped responding to commands. Just lay in his medical cot staring at the ceiling, his dual hearts beating steadily even as his mind collapsed. They tried to save him, pumped him full of stimulants and neural stabilizers, but his will to continue was gone. Eventually, his heart stopped anyway, his body shutting down from lack of nutrition, despite having every implant necessary to sustain it. 6 aspirants remained when Phase 15 concluded. 6 survivors. We looked at each other across the apothecarian and saw strangers. Boys we'd known maybe in some half-remembered past before the surgeries began. But the people those boys had been were gone, eroded by months of transformation and conditioning and chemical alteration. We were taller now. I stood nearly 2 meters, my enhanced frame still growing, still developing. My shoulders were broad enough that I had to turn sideways to fit through standard doorways. My hands could crush steel, my bones could turn blades. I had organs that no human possessed, capabilities that no human could match. And I was empty inside. Not in a bad way, exactly. Just hollow. The emotions that had once defined me were gone, scraped away by the conditioning and the trauma and the systematic destruction of my former self. I could remember that I'd once cared about things. Family, home, survival in ways that went beyond pure tactical assessment. But I couldn't remember what caring had felt like. Couldn't access the emotional context that made those memories meaningful. All that remained was duty, purpose, the knowledge that I existed to serve the chapter, to fight for the Emperor, to become a weapon in the endless war that defined humanity's existence. It should have terrified me, that emptiness, that absence of self. But I felt only acceptance. This was what I'd become, what I'd had to become, the price of transformation. Phase 16 through 18 came almost as a relief after the intensity of the earlier surgeries. Not because they were easier, but because they felt final. Like approaching the end of something long and terrible, seeing the finish line even if I couldn't quite reach it yet. These implants had to wait until I was older, my body fully adolescent, my hormone levels stable enough to handle modifications that would have killed a younger child. I was 16 by the time they began Phase 16, though I only knew this because Thaddeus noted it in my medical file. Time had ceased to have normal meaning. My life was marked by surgeries and recovery periods, by the steady accumulation of organs and capabilities. 2 years since Viridian 3. 2 years since I'd been Torvin Raid, a child surviving in the ash, killing orcs with improvised weapons because the alternative was death. That person seemed like a character from a story I'd once heard, not someone I'd actually been. The memory was there, filed away in neural pathways that the conditioning hadn't quite erased, but the emotional connection was gone. I looked at that memory the way you might look at historical data, interested but detached. By Phase 16, the apothecaries had refined their approach. They knew our bodies now, understood how we responded to trauma and chemical treatment. The surgeries became more efficient, more precise. Recovery times shortened. Our enhanced biology made us resilient in ways normal humans could never achieve. Wounds that would have required weeks of healing took days. Infections that should have been fatal were crushed by our augmented immune systems. We were becoming what the gene seed had promised we'd become: post-human, transhuman, something that wore the shape of humanity but had transcended its limitations. The final 3 implants were the strangest of all. The most alien, the modifications that would mark us as space marines rather than merely augmented humans. Phase 16 brought changes to my skin that made the earlier mucranoid glands seem simple. Additional dermal modifications, subcutaneous implants that reinforced my flesh without making it noticeably different to visual inspection. I could be stabbed with a combat knife and the blade would turn, deflected by the reinforced tissue beneath my skin. Could survive temperatures that would char normal flesh, my skin maintaining integrity in conditions that should have caused third-degree burns. The pain of this modification was spread out over weeks, a constant low-grade agony as my entire dermal layer was restructured from the inside out. I felt my skin itching constantly, felt strange sensations as new nerve endings were grown and integrated, felt myself becoming something that looked human from the outside but was fundamentally different beneath the surface. Phase 17 seemed almost anticlimactic after everything that had come before. Minor modifications, refinements to existing systems, the careful calibration of organs that had already been implanted. But this phase included intensive hypno-conditioning, more time in the hypnomat than I'd spent since the early days. They were refining my mind now, not just my body. Installing combat protocols and tactical doctrines with surgical precision. Teaching me skills I'd never actually practiced, downloading expertise directly into my neural architecture. I learned to field strip and maintain every weapon in the Blood Angel's arsenal, without ever having touched one physically. Could recite the specifications of a land raider by memory, knew its weak points and tactical deployment options as if I'd spent years studying the vehicle. Understood orbital drop pod procedures, void combat tactics, urban warfare protocols. All of it uploaded directly into my brain while I sat immobile in the hypnomat, consciousness fragmenting under the weight of raw data. When I emerged from Phase 17, I knew I'd lost more of myself. More memories gone, more personality smoothed away. The conditioning had carved out whatever made me individual and replaced it with doctrine, with loyalty to the chapter and the Emperor that went beyond faith into something more fundamental. Biological compulsion, written into my neural architecture at a level I couldn't consciously access or modify. I existed to serve. Any thought that contradicted that purpose was automatically suppressed before it could fully form. I was being made incapable of independent thought in any way that might threaten my function as a space marine, and I accepted this, embraced it even, because the conditioning had made me understand that individual identity was weakness, that the purpose of the chapter was greater than any single Marine, that my life only had meaning in context of my service. Phase 18 was the progenoid gland's final activation, the moment when the implants that had been growing inside me for years reached functional maturity. The glands in my neck and chest were now absorbing genetic information from every other organ, storing it in germ cells that could be cultured into full gene seed implants after my death. I felt them activating like a low vibration in my body, a sensation that wasn't quite physical but wasn't imaginary either. The knowledge that I was now carrying the chapter's future inside me, that my death wouldn't end my contribution to the Blood Angels, but would instead allow me to continue through the aspirants who'd receive implants grown from my progenoids. 2,000 years later, theoretically, my gene seed could still be producing new space Marines. My genetic legacy continuing long after my body had been recycled into nutrients for the chapter's systems. This was immortality of a sort, not personal, not individual, but something deeper, genetic. The preservation of the template rather than the specific implementation. I was a vessel for the gene seed, and the gene seed was sacred. More important than my life, more valuable than my experiences or personality or anything that made me individually me. This truth had been burned into my neural architecture through months of conditioning, and I understood it with a certainty that went beyond faith. Only one aspirant died during phases 16 through 18. His progenoid glands mutated during their final development, the genetic information they were storing becoming corrupted somehow. The apothecaries tried to excise the damaged glands and replace them, but the mutation had spread into his surrounding tissue, contaminating his gene seed at a fundamental level. They terminated him, not executed exactly, but euthanized with clinical efficiency. His gene seed was too corrupted to harvest, his body too contaminated to be safely recycled. He was incinerated, his remains destroyed completely rather than reclaimed. His name was removed from the chapter records as if he'd never existed. The most complete death possible, not just biological cessation, but the erasure of his genetic legacy. 5 aspirants remained. 5 survivors out of 30 who'd begun this process. We stood together in the apothecarian, our enhanced bodies making us look like young adults, though most of us were still technically adolescents. 16 to 18 years old, depending on when we'd been selected. We barely fit in the room anymore. Each of us stood over 2 meters tall, masses of enhanced muscle and reinforced bone, our bodies temples to the gene seed that had transformed us from human children into something that transcended humanity entirely. But we weren't finished yet. One final phase remained, the implant that would mark us as true space Marines, that would allow us to interface with the sacred power armor that defined the Adeptus Astartes. Phase 19. The Black Carapace. Thaddeus gathered us in the apothecarian's primary surgical bay, the largest chamber in the facility, tall enough to accommodate our enhanced frames and wide enough for all 5 of us to stand side by side. The other apothecaries were there too, a full complement of 8 in their white armor, their augmented faces hidden behind expressionless masks. This was a ceremony as much as a medical procedure, I realized. A ritual that marked the final step in our transformation. The Black Carapace, Thaddeus began, his metallic voice carrying through the chamber, is the 19th and final gene seed implant you will receive. It is also the most distinctive, the modification that marks you as Adeptus Astartes, regardless of what other implants you may possess. Without the Carapace, you cannot properly interface with power armor. Without proper interface, you cannot fight at the level required of a Space Marine. You will be incomplete, unfinished, unworthy to wear the colors of the Blood Angels. He paused, letting that sink in. We'd come so far, survived so much, To fail now, at the final stage, would be worse than dying in the earlier phases. The black carapace is unique among the gene seed implants, he continued. It is not grown from a single organ. It is not implanted in a specific location. Instead, it begins as a controlled cancer, sheets of plasteel and synthetic nerve tissue that are grafted beneath your skin and allowed to spread throughout your body. Controlled cancer. The words should have been terrifying. Instead, I felt only anticipation. This was the final test, the last modification that would either transform me into a true space marine or kill me in the attempt. The procedure takes 3 stages, Thaddeus explained. First, we graft large sections of the carapace beneath your skin, primarily across your torso and limbs. These sections are seeded with growth factors that will cause them to spread, to connect with each other, to integrate with your nervous system. The growth process takes weeks and is extraordinarily painful, even with your enhanced tolerance for trauma. He gestured to the surgical tables behind him, each one prepared for what was coming. Cutting tools, grafting equipment, sheets of black plastic material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The black carapace itself, grown from gene seed in vats, waiting to be implanted into our bodies. Second, once the carapace has spread sufficiently, we implant the interface ports. Neural connection points that will emerge from your skin, hardwired directly into your nervous system through the carapace. These ports allow power armor to link with your body, to become an extension of your flesh rather than merely a protective shell you wear. Third, and finally, we allow the carapace to mature fully. The growth continues for months, eventually covering most of your body in a thin layer of reinforced plastic material. You will feel it beneath your skin, black tendrils spreading through your flesh like roots through soil. It will itch, it will ache. It will feel like something alien living inside you, which is precisely what it is. He looked at each of us in turn, his augmented eyes glowing red behind his mask. More aspirants fail at this stage than any other. Not from death necessarily, though that remains possible, but from madness. The sensation of something growing beneath your skin, spreading through your body beyond your control, breaks minds that survived every previous trauma. Some aspirants claw their own flesh, trying to remove the carapace, tearing themselves apart in the process. Others simply shut down, their consciousness retreating into catatonia rather than face what's happening to their bodies. You have been prepared for this, he continued. Conditioned to accept augmentation, to embrace the transformation regardless of personal cost. But no amount of conditioning can truly prepare you for the sensation of the carapace spreading. You will each respond differently. You will suffer in unique ways, and if you fail, if your minds break under the strain, you will be terminated and your gene seed harvested. There is no mercy at this stage, only completion or death. We understood. We'd understood for months that this was always the bargain. Succeed or be recycled. There was no middle ground, no partial transformation. You became Astartes or you became raw material for the next generation. Assume positions, Thaddeus ordered. We moved to the surgical tables without hesitation, our enhanced bodies obeying with the mechanical precision that had been drilled into us through endless conditioning. I lay back on the cold metal surface, felt restraints closing around my wrists and ankles, across my chest and thighs and forehead. Complete immobilization. The black carapace surgery could not tolerate any movement whatsoever. Thaddeus approached my table carrying something that looked like a sheet of black glass. The carapace material, thin as paper but dense with neural interfaces and growth factors. I could see my reflection in its surface, distorted and strange. The face looking back at me barely seemed human anymore. Too angular, too severe, eyes that had seen too much trauma to belong to someone my age. "The Emperor be with you, aspirant," Thaddeus said. It might have been the first time I'd heard anything approaching sympathy in his voice. Then he began to cut. The neural dampeners worked, mostly, but nothing could have completely blocked the sensation of having my skin peeled back in sections, layers of dermal tissue lifted away to expose the muscle and reinforced bone beneath. Thaddeus worked with perfect precision, his augmented hands steady despite the gruesome nature of the procedure. The black carapace sheets were grafted directly onto my muscle tissue, pressed into place and secured with bioadhesives and surgical staples. Each section was precisely sized, cut to fit the contours of my enhanced body. Chest first, a large sheet covering my torso, positioned over my fused rib cage and the organs beneath. I felt it adhering to my flesh, felt microscopic tendrils extending from the material and burrowing into my muscle tissue, seeking nerve endings, making connections. The sensation was indescribable. Not quite pain, not quite pressure, but something in between. A wrongness that my brain couldn't properly process. Then my back. Another large section, this one requiring me to be turned over despite the restraints, positioned face down, while Thaddeus grafted carapace material across my shoulder blades and spine. The tendrils found my enhanced nervous system, began interfacing with neural pathways that had been created by earlier implants. My arms next. Both at once, two apothecaries working in tandem, stripping skin and grafting carapace from shoulder to wrist. My legs, the same process repeated on larger scale. The procedure took hours. I remained conscious throughout as required, my mind tracking every cut and every graft with perfect clarity that the catalepsin node provided. By the time they were finished, when my skin had been sutured back into place over the carapace sections, I felt fundamentally changed. There was something beneath my skin now, something that wasn't me, that had never been me, that would never fully be me but was somehow becoming part of me anyway. The recovery chamber was different this time. Not an isolation cell or a medical cot, but something in between. A private room with minimal furnishings, monitored but not controlled. They wanted to observe how we handled the carapace growth, wanted to track our psychological responses without interfering unless absolutely necessary. I could feel it starting almost immediately. The itch. Faint at first, easily ignored, just a sensation beneath my skin where the carapace had been grafted. But it grew stronger over hours, spreading outward from the graft sites like fire through dry grass. Not actual fire, not pain exactly, but a crawling awareness of something moving beneath my skin. The carapace was spreading, growing, extending black tendrils through my subcutaneous tissue, reaching toward the other graft sites, making connections, integrating with my nervous system at a fundamental level. I could feel it happening, could track its progress by the changing sensations in my flesh. Each tendril that extended felt like a tiny wire being threaded through my muscles. Each connection to a nerve ending felt like a pinprick of ice. Days passed. The itch became constant, all-consuming, a sensation that dominated every waking moment despite my enhanced tolerance for discomfort. I wanted to scratch, wanted to tear at my skin and rip the carapace out before it spread any further. But the conditioning held. The months of hypno-indoctrination, the systematic reconstruction of my mind to accept whatever was necessary. I endured. One night, I made the mistake of looking at my reflection in the polished metal surface of the chamber wall. In the dim red light, I could see them, black lines beneath my skin, not veins, though they followed similar pathways. These were the carapace tendrils, visible as dark shadows spreading through my flesh. They branched and connected, forming patterns that looked almost organic but were fundamentally artificial. I was being consumed from the inside, transformed into something that was part living tissue, part engineered plastic, the boundary between flesh and technology blurring until no clear distinction remained. And I couldn't stop it, couldn't slow it down, could only watch as the carapace spread day by day, hour by hour, claiming more of my body with each passing moment. One of the 5 aspirants broke. I heard it happening through the walls of my chamber, the sudden screaming that cut through the fortress monastery's perpetual background noise. He was tearing at himself, clawing his own skin off in strips, trying to remove the carapace by force. It didn't work. The material had spread too far, integrated too deeply. All he accomplished was exposing the black plastic beneath his skin, proving that he was already more machine than man, more weapon than human. The apothecaries terminated him. I heard the bolter shot, single and final, echoing through the corridors, heard the servitors being dispatched to collect what remained. 4 aspirants now, 4 survivors. After 3 weeks, the spreading stopped. The carapace had reached its full extent, covering most of my torso, my limbs, portions of my back and neck. I could feel it beneath my skin as a continuous presence, a second layer that sat between my nervous system and my epidermis. Then came the interface ports. Small surgical procedures this time, Thaddeus working quickly to implant neural connection points at specific locations across my body. Each port was a small cylinder of dense plasteel, wired directly into the carapace and through it to my nervous system. When they were complete, I had ports emerging from my skin at my spine, my chest, my shoulders, the back of my neck. Connection points where power armor would interface with my body, creating a feedback loop that would make the armor an extension of my flesh. They tested it 2 weeks later, brought me to the arming chamber, a vast space filled with racks of power armor in various states of maintenance. The Blood Angel's colors were everywhere, crimson armor with gold trim, the blood drop insignia repeated on every surface. "This is training armor," Thaddeus explained, gesturing to a suit that seemed to be waiting specifically for me. Basic Mark 7 plate, unadorned and unpainted. You will learn to interface with it, to move as if it were your own body rather than something you wear. The armor was massive. Each piece weighed as much as a grown man, the ceramite plates dense enough to stop bolter rounds. Servitors helped position the components, lifting them with mechanical strength while I stood at the center of the arming chamber and tried to prepare myself for what was coming. The suit's interface plugs aligned with my carapace ports. Chest piece first, the heavy plates settling onto my torso with a weight that should have been unbearable. Then the moment of connection. The plugs slid into my ports, neural connections being made, and suddenly the armor was part of me. I felt it like I felt my own body. The weight disappeared, not because it was lighter, but because my brain was processing it differently. This wasn't something I wore. This was me. An extension of my flesh, responsive to my thoughts as quickly as my own limbs. More armor pieces followed. Shoulder guards, arm sections, leg plates, each one connected to the carapace, each one becoming part of my sensory network. When the process was complete, when I was fully encased in Mark 7 power armor, I looked down at myself and saw a space marine. The armor stood 2.5 meters tall. I couldn't see my own body beneath the ceramite plates, couldn't distinguish where flesh ended and armor began. When I raised my arm, the armor moved with it, servo motors responding to signals from my nervous system before I was consciously aware of giving commands. I took a step. The armor moved perfectly, balanced by gyroscopic stabilizers that compensated for the massive weight. Another step, then a third. I was walking in power armor as naturally as I'd walked in my own skin, the black carapace translating my intentions into mechanical action with no perceptible delay. "Begin combat drill," Thaddeus ordered. Servitors appeared carrying training weapons, a practice bolter weighted to match the real thing but firing inert rounds. a chainsword with its teeth deactivated, a combat knife as long as my forearm had been before the transformation. I took the bolter, felt its weight, its balance. My hands knew how to hold it even though I'd never physically trained with one. The hypno-conditioning had prepared me, downloaded muscle memory and combat reflexes directly into my neural architecture. I aimed at targets that appeared on the chamber's far wall. Squeezed the trigger. The bolter kicked against my shoulder, the recoil powerful enough to bruise a normal human's bones. In power armor, with my enhanced physiology and the black carapaces distributing the force across my entire frame, it felt like nothing. A gentle push, easily compensated for. The practice round hit center mass on a target 50 meters away. I fired again and again, every shot perfect, every adjustment automatic. My body and the armor moving as one, the boundary between them erased by the carapace's neural interface. The combat drill lasted 6 hours. They had me running, jumping, engaging targets at various ranges with different weapons, testing the armor's capabilities and my ability to use them. By the end, I was functioning at a level that would have taken a normal human years of training to achieve. But I wasn't a normal human. Hadn't been for months, maybe longer. I was whatever the gene seed had made me. A weapon in the shape of a man, wearing armor that was as much part of my body as my own enhanced skeleton. The final phase was complete. Phase 19, the black carapace. I'd survived, more than survived. I'd been transformed. There was one final step. The ceremony that would mark me as a full battle brother of the Blood Angels chapter, no longer an aspirant or a neophyte, but a true space marine. They assembled us in the fortress monastery's primary chapel, a vast cathedral-like space that stretched hundreds of meters above our heads. The walls were carved with the names of fallen blood angels, thousands upon thousands of battle brothers who'd served and died over 10 millennia. The ceiling was painted with scenes from the Great Crusade, the Primarch Sanguinius leading his legion in battles that had defined the Imperium's early history. 4 of us stood in formation, 4 survivors out of 30 who'd been selected from Viridian III's ash and blood. The attrition rate was typical, Thaddeus had told me. Sometimes half the aspirants survived, sometimes fewer. These 4 had proven ourselves worthy through genetic compatibility and sheer stubborn refusal to die. We wore the training armor still, unpainted ceramite that gleamed dully in the chapel's red light. Before us stood the chapter's senior leadership, the captain of the first company, the master of sanctity, the chief librarian in his ornate psychic hood, and at the center, the chapter master himself, Lord Commander Dante, wearing armor so ancient and decorated with so many honors that I could barely process all the details. He was old. Not visibly, his face remained youthful thanks to the gene seed's life-extending properties, but old in experience, in service. He'd been leading the Blood Angels for longer than most planetary governors had been alive. His presence was overwhelming, a spiritual weight that pressed down on me despite my enhanced physiology and conditioning. Aspirants. His voice was like distant thunder, deep and resonant with authority that needed no augmentation. You stand before me having endured trials that would destroy ordinary men. You have been tested in ways that most humans cannot imagine. Your bodies have been transformed, your minds have been conditioned, your very souls have been dedicated to the service of the Emperor and the defense of humanity. He began to walk along our line, studying each of us with eyes that seemed to see past our armor and flesh to whatever remained of our individual selves. The transformation you have undergone is not merely physical. You're not simply humans with enhanced organs and armored skin. You have been remade in the image of the Primarch Sanguinius. Blessed be his name. His genetic legacy lives within your cells. His nobility, his fury, his capacity for sacrifice. These traits are now as much part of you as your own blood. He stopped in front of me. Up close, I could see the details of his armor. The death mask that covered his face, golden and serene. The winged jump pack that marked him as one of the chapter's assault specialists. The axe mortalis at his hip, a relic weapon that had ended the lives of countless enemies across centuries of warfare. "What is your designation?" he asked. It took me a moment to remember. The conditioning had buried so much of my old identity, replaced it with doctrine and duty, but the name was still there, filed away in neural pathways that hadn't been completely erased. "Torvin Raid, my lord," I said. My voice sounded strange, deeper than I remembered, resonating through the armor's Vox grill. "From Viridian 3, selected during the Orcish invasion approximately 2 years past." "Torvin Raid," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "Do you remember who you were before you came to us?" I considered the question carefully. Did I remember? Yes, technically. There were memories stored in my brain, data points about a child who'd survived in ash and blood. But the emotional connection was gone. I could recall the facts of that existence without feeling anything about them. "I remember what I was, my lord," I answered slowly. "But that person no longer exists. I am what the chapter has made me, what the gene seed has shaped me to become." Something might have been approval flickered in Dante's eyes, or perhaps satisfaction. "Truth," he said simply. "The boy you were is gone, consumed by the transformation. What remains is Astartes, Space Marine, Angel of Death in service to the Emperor of mankind." He addressed all 4 of us now, his voice carrying through the chapel. "You have survived where others failed. You carry within your bodies the gene seed of Sanguinius, the legacy of the great angel, the biological heritage that marks you as blood angels. This is not merely an honor. It is a responsibility that will define every moment of your existence until death claims you. You will serve this chapter for as long as your bodies remain functional, fighting in wars across the galaxy, dying in battles you cannot yet imagine. You will know pain that would break normal men. You will witness horrors that would drive baseline humans to madness. You will be wounded, broken, rebuilt, and sent to fight again. This is the life of a space marine. Endless war in service of an Imperium that cannot survive without our sacrifice." He paused, letting that sink in. "And when death finally comes, when your bodies fail and your gene seed is harvested, you will continue through the aspirants who receive implants grown from your progenoid glands. Your genetic legacy will persist long after your individual existence ends. This is the only immortality you will know, not personal, not individual, but genetic. The preservation of the chapter's genetic material through generation after generation of space marines. Do you accept this duty? Do you pledge yourself completely to the Blood Angels chapter, to the defense of humanity, to the service of the Emperor? Do you swear to fight until death, to know no fear, to be the shield that stands between mankind and the darkness?" There was only one possible answer. Only one response that made sense after everything we'd endured to reach this moment. We spoke in perfect unison, our voices amplified by armor Vox systems, the words echoing through the chapel. "We so swear." "Then I name you Battle Brothers of the Blood Angels chapter," Dante declared. "May you serve with honor. May you die with glory. May your gene seed continue long after your bodies have been recycled." Servitors approached carrying paint and brushes. They began to apply the chapter's colors to our armor, transforming us from anonymous ceramite shapes into blood angels. Crimson across the main plates, deep red like arterial blood. Gold trim on the edges, bright and shining. The blood drop on our shoulder guards, white as bone against the red background. The transformation took hours, each coat of paint applied with ritual precision. When it was complete, I looked at my fellow new battle brothers and saw 4 space marines in full Blood Angels livery. We were identical in our armor, distinguished only by minor variations in height and build. Individual identity had been sacrificed for the good of the chapter. Personality had been filed down to the essential elements that supported our function as warriors. The ceremony concluded with the presentation of weapons. Real weapons this time, not training equipment. Each of us received a bolter, the holy weapon of the Adeptus Astartes, a mass-reactive explosive round launcher that could turn human bodies into pink mist. A chainsword, its motorized teeth capable of chewing through armor and flesh with equal ease. A combat knife that was as long as some normal human swords. Additional equipment would come later, specialized gear based on our assigned roles within the chapter. But these 3 weapons were standard, the baseline armament that every Space Marine carried. I held my bolter and felt its weight, its balance. It was beautiful in the way that perfectly engineered things are beautiful. Functional, efficient, designed for a single purpose, executed with absolute precision. Like me, like all of us. We'd been engineered for a purpose, too. Shaped by gene seed and conditioning and surgical modifications into weapons that thought and moved and fought, but existed primarily to kill the Emperor's enemies. That night, alone in the quarters I'd been assigned, I removed my armor for the first time since the ceremony. The black carapace ports on my skin looked like small metal studs, interface points that would never go away, permanent modifications that marked me forever as something other than human. I looked at my reflection in a polished metal plate, saw a stranger looking back, 2 meters tall and masses of enhanced muscle, skin pale from months spent inside the fortress monastery, eyes that had been changed by the oculobe, pupils reacting too fast to changes in light, vision too sharp to be natural. My face was different too, more angular, more severe. The bones had been restructured along with everything else, shifting into proportions that looked almost human, but not quite. I tried to remember Torvin Raid, the 12-year-old boy who'd driven a piece of rebar through an orc's eye, who'd stood in ash and blood and refused to die when death would have been so much easier, who'd been chosen because he'd shown the capacity to survive, to kill when necessary, to endure what couldn't be endured. That boy was gone. Not dead exactly, more like overwritten. His memories were still there, buried deep in neural architecture that had been systematically modified by months of conditioning. But the person who'd created those memories, who'd experienced those events, no longer existed. In his place stood Brother Torvin of the Blood Angels chapter, 9th Legion Adeptus Astartes, gene son of the Primarch Sanguinius, a space marine, an angel of death, a weapon in service to the Emperor of mankind. I felt nothing about the transformation, no grief for the boy I'd been, no excitement about what I'd become, just acceptance, and underneath that, the absolute certainty that this was right. This was what I was meant to be. The hypno-conditioning had made doubt impossible, had carved away every part of my psyche that might question or resist or wish for something different. All that remained was duty, purpose, the knowledge that I existed to fight, to die when necessary, to serve the chapter and the Emperor until my body failed and my gene seed could be harvested. This was what it meant to be Astartes, not superhuman strength or enhanced organs or power armor. Those were just tools, means to an end. What defined a space marine was the complete absence of individual identity beyond the needs of the chapter, the total dedication to a purpose larger than any single life, the acceptance of death not as an ending but as another form of service, the final contribution a Marine could make when his gene seed was harvested for the next generation. I thought about the boy who'd survived Viridian 3-1 last time. tried to feel something about his transformation, about everything he'd lost in becoming what I now was. But there was nothing. Only empty space where emotions used to exist, filled now with doctrine and loyalty and the absolute certainty of purpose. Somewhere, deep in the fortress monastery, servitors were cleaning the apothecarium, preparing it for the next generation of aspirants, the next batch of children who'd be selected from some war zone and brought here to be transformed or destroyed in the attempt. The process would continue as it had for 10,000 years. Boys becoming something more than human, or dying in the attempt. Their gene seed preserved, refined, passed down through generation after generation of space marines. An unbroken chain stretching back to the Primarch Sanguinius himself. I was part of that chain now. Link in the genetic legacy that defined the Blood Angels chapter. When I died, when I fell in battle serving the Emperor, my progenoid glands would be harvested. The gene seed they contained would be used to create 2 more Marines who would carry my genetic legacy into battles I'd never see, in wars that hadn't yet been conceived. And they, in turn, would create 2 more when they fell. My genetic material could theoretically continue for thousands of years, creating Marines across centuries of warfare. This was immortality of a sort, not personal, not the preservation of memory or personality or anything that made me individually me, but genetic, biological, the continuation of the template that had been used to create me, passed down and refined and preserved through endless generations. I stood in my quarters, looking at my reflection, and tried one last time to find some fragment of Torvin Raid. Some piece of the child I'd been that had survived the transformation intact. Nothing. The conditioning had done its work too well. The boy was gone, consumed by the process that had made me Astartes. All that remained was purpose. I'm no longer what I was. I'm no longer Torvin Raid, child of Viridian III, survivor of ash and blood and Orcish invasion. That person died in the apothecarium, erased by gene seed and conditioning and surgical modification. I am Brother Torvin of the Blood Angels, gene son of Sanguinius, servant of the Emperor. I am 2 meters of enhanced muscle and reinforced bone, wearing crimson armor that weighs more than 3 grown men. I carry weapons that can destroy armies. I possess organs that no human should have, capabilities that transcend baseline humanity in every measurable way. I am conditioned to know no fear, to fight until death, to serve the chapter and the Emperor without question or hesitation. I have been forged in suffering that would break normal humans. I have survived where 25 others failed. I carry the chapter's future in my progenoid glands, genetic legacy that will continue long after my body has been recycled. I am Adeptus Astartes, Space Marine, Angel of Death. I am what humanity needs me to be, and I will serve until the Emperor decides otherwise. This is what happens when they forge you into a Space Marine. This is the price of transformation, paid in pain and memory, and everything that makes you individually human. This is what it means to transcend mortality, to become something greater than yourself, to be reshaped according to a template 10,000 years old. You die, not physically, not immediately, but you die nonetheless. The person you were is erased, overwritten with doctrine and duty and genetic programming that makes you incapable of being anything except what the chapter needs. And in exchange for that death, you become part of something larger than any individual life. Become a link in a chain that stretches back to the Emperor's own gene laboratories, forward into a future you'll never see. Become legend and weapon and genetic legacy all at once. This is the truth they don't tell you when they select you from the battlefield, when they promise you the chance to become a Space Marine, to transcend your human limitations, to serve the Emperor directly. They don't mention the cost, the systematic destruction of your identity, the conditioning that makes you incapable of being anything except loyal, the hypno-indoctrination that carves away everything that makes you you and replaces it with what the chapter needs you to be. But even if they had told me, even if I'd known from the beginning what transformation would actually mean, I would have made the same choice. Because the alternative was dying in the ash of Viridian 3. Because being recycled in service to the Emperor is still better than being forgotten entirely. Because even the fragmented memories I still possess suggest that Torven Raid understood on some level that survival was worth any price. I am Space Marine now. I am Blood Angel. I am weapon and legacy, and the genetic continuation of the Primarch Sanguinius. And I shall know no fear.